We made this. Hello and welcome to Chucky Vision, the podcast about the Chucky franchise here on the We Made This podcast network. My name's Mark Adams and I am your host. With me at this time, as always, is Dev Elson. Hello, Dev.
What is up, guys? What is up? This is a real treat today.
There are a lot of ways to describe the film we're looking at, and the real treat is probably one of them. But we are also being joined by my friend from Super Tat Film Club. Hello, Hollywood Fletch.
Hello.
Mate, it's nice to be podcasting with you again. And for people who haven't listened, tell them about Super Tat Film Club.
Super Tat Film Club is a film podcast that I was doing with yourself and Malachi J. Matthews, in which we talk about films from our fabled Tat list, which is a list of films that we found on YouTube that you can watch on there now. In fact, you can still go on there. The list is there. And they're all, well, they're ranging from god-awful to absolutely lost gems that we needed to tell the people about. And we haven't done one in a while, actually, Mark. And
no,
it's funny. I woke up this morning and checked the emails, and someone's emailed Tat Club asking where we are.
I mean, we're here. We're
They
doing
miss
this.
us. They miss us, Mark.
They should miss us. We were brilliant, says the guy with the massive ego. But a lot of the films we did on Super Tat Film Club were undeniably bad horror. And that was always my jam when we did that show. There was a show that you did without me, just you and Matt, where you actually covered Child's Play as well.
Yeah, we did. We did the first one.
Yeah, I really enjoyed your take on Child's Play. So what I'll do is I'll share that on the socials when this episode goes up so that people can have a listen to that specific episode as well, I think.
I'll be honest, I do not remember a single thing that I said on that episode. So, yeah.
Well, you struggled to be cynical like you usually are because you really enjoyed the film.
I did. I enjoy all of the Child's Play films that I've seen.
Mm. In fact, shall we get into the guest questions, mate?
Please do.
So the first question is, how did you first encounter Chucky?
Well, the first Child's Play film, let's see. I mean, the first one, that's about as old as I am. So it's kind of always been around. I mean, it's like the haunted doll film, isn't it? So it's kind of always like the name Chucky has always just been around, but I never actually watched it as a kid. I never watched any of the Child's Play films until I was much older. In fact, the first Child's Play film I ever watched is this one that we're doing today.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's an interesting start for you if Seed of Chucky was your first fucking Chucky film.
Yeah. I think I didn't really get the original tone of the film going off this one, to be honest. It is a bit of a departure from what the actual rest of the franchise is. So yeah, I guess it's a weird one, but I seem to have a habit of doing that, so it's par for the course, really.
So, what is your favourite Chucky film? Is it Seed?
Yeah, it absolutely is. You know, I've seen some of the other ones, and do you know what? I was right. I was right to watch this one. It's the best. It's the best one.
Why do you say that?
Because it's just brilliant. It's just absolutely brilliant. Like, I don't know. One thing I really do love is like camp cinema. And this film is so camp that John Waters appears in it like some kind of deity. He's like the patron saint of trash cinema. And here he is. I reckon he just manifested on set one day and just appeared there. It's just the best one in my opinion.
So what's your favourite Chucky moment across all of the films? Your favourite, maybe death or favourite scene or line? What's your favourite moment?
The bit I always remembered, right? And I think this is it, because this really stuck in my head, and this is why I always remembered this film. For some reason, the bit I always remembered is when John Waters dies, actually.
Melty face time.
Yeah, when he gets like the acid on his head and he just melts.
It is a very good moment.
I just thought it was cool. I thought, God, if the rest of the Child Play films are like this, it's going to be wicked. But do you know what? They weren't. They weren't.
How old were you when you first saw this film then?
I would have been about like 16, 15.
Right, so you weren't super young. In fact, you were of legal age for this film, because it is only a 15.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I must have been.
And so, why Seed of Chucky? We offered you anything that you wanted. You could have been on any of the first 7 films. Why was it Seed of Chucky that not only did you choose, but you basically bit my hand off?
Because it's the easiest one to do. Like, you could talk about this film forever. Like, tell me you didn't watch this film and you were like, oh God, I've got to mention that bit as well. Like, it's just the best one. It's the funniest one. I don't know. It's the most valuable one out of all of them as well, I would argue.
Mm.
Like, I reckon it matters more than any of the other ones. And it's just, you know, you get to see like Chucky have a wank in it.
Yes, you do. And yes, I accept your answer. It is absolutely batshit crazy. And I think we have got so much to talk about. Shall we get into it?
Let's go.
So, Seed of Chucky came out in 2004. It runs at, yet again, another tight 85 minutes, and it was rated 15 in the UK. The tagline was, "Time to raise some hell." I fucking love the taglines that they come up with for Chucky films. They're always bangers. The film had a 12 million budget and made 24 million on the box office. And Dev, since we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, I have looked up what's considered to be a success at the box office. And so about doubling your budget means you've broken even.
Yeah.
So 3 times your budget is considered a success. So looking at the films we've done so far, 3 was an absolute flop. Bride and Seed are considered flops, but that's a little bit more borderline. Child's Play 2 was a hit, and Child's Play 1 was a box office smash. So there you go.
Yeah, I would be interested to learn, because this was the first... No, not the first film, because they had to switch to Orion, didn't they, for Child's Play 2 or 1, I believe. They were switching around a couple times. But yes, this wasn't Universal like the last couple ones. This was Rogue Pictures or Rogue Features, and we'll get into why Universal didn't want to do it. But I would be interested to know how much, like, a smaller company, because it is a smaller film in a sense, like a lower budget film. It seemed like it was marketed kind of heavily, or at least it felt that way.
Yeah, I mean, it had half the budget of the last film. So that tells you the kind of difference between the two of them.
It was really panned, though, wasn't it, when it came out? A lot of people absolutely hated it.
Well, yes, it did get a 34% score on Rotten Tomatoes. Fletch, do you think that's fair?
Not at all. I don't think that's fair at all. That's ridiculous. You can't just have like another straight slasher film. Like, this film, like you said, came out in like 2004. it had to be the tone that it was in. It was just the only logical step for this franchise. Like, if you look at, so let's say, so it's a slasher film, right?
Yeah.
The slasher film had basically turned on its head already about 8 years ago. When did Scream come out? 96?
Exactly.
So it had already become like a parody of itself. And the franchise had already followed suit in that tone with Bride. And so in this one, they just kind of went full tilt into comedy, because this is just a pure comedy. And if you look at the other slasher franchises that were also out in the early 2000s, they took themselves way too seriously, and they were so bad. Like what was it? Jason X, I think, came out 3 years before this one. Like, that film could have been 100 times better if it knew how silly it was.
I love Jason X because it's silly.
Yeah, but the guy who made it didn't want it to be, and you can tell, because in parts that film just becomes super boring. And for me, Jason X is like one of the most disappointing films I've ever seen.
Oh, come on.
It
Frozen
is.
Head Smash Death is the best.
Oh, yeah, good. It's also crap. Like, it just, like, the soundtrack is terrible. Do you remember when the trailer come out and it had Drowning Pool on?
I love that trailer.
Shit. Fucking hell. Jason slashing people up in space to fucking Drowning Pool. Like, that song was made for him. Where was it in the film? Wasn't there. Just this crappy, like, made-for-TV, sci-fi TV show fucking soundtrack that they had on. It felt like watching an episode of Farscape. It was rubbish. It was so bad.
So you don't think the score is fair then, Fletch? What about you, Dev? Do we think that 34% is fair?
God, I do not want this to be a repeat of Child's Play 3 where I sound really down on it. I'm not down on this film. I enjoy it. But as we said, Bride of Chucky only has a 50%. And I think we all agreed that film deserves a better score, because Bride of Chucky is a really lean, tight, and so much of it serves its purpose. Like, it's a very direct movie. I like so much of what goes on in this movie, but it's not a script. It's more of a manifesto. It's all over the place.
I think personally that, it covers a lot of very kind of controversial topics, certainly for 2004, with real kind of sensitivity in a fucking slasher film. And I think that should be commended. Do I think it's a perfect film? No, but I think 34% is a bit harsh.
It is harsh. It is harsh, and it's wrong. And this film deserves way better.
To be fair, we haven't agreed with the Rotten Tomato score since the first film, Fletch. So, we don't tend to agree. We kind of like Chucky films.
Yeah. I saw a little interview of Don Mancini about this film, and he's actually quite fond of it. And he comes out quite vehemently in defense of this film, because people were so mad at him when it came out. It's like I say, when it has value, though, because now it's one of them films, and you find that, to be fair, you find this with a lot of these type of films, is that they're a bit, well, they take a while for people to warm up to them, because it's such a departure from what people are expecting from the franchise, that it takes a while for people to kind of step back and appreciate what it was doing right and what was good about it.
I think the step they made between Child's Play 3 and Bride of Chucky was well received, and it was quite a step. So they made a similar level of step from Bride to Seed that people perhaps weren't ready for.
Yeah. The question is, would this film have worked on its own if it wasn't like a Chucky film? Do you get what I mean?
Probably not.
I don't know. I mean, well, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I think it would, but also, like, if it wasn't a Child's Play film, you wouldn't get, like, just Chucky doing and saying the things that he does in this film, like having a wank. So I feel like there is, I don't know, it does have its place, and It's just my favourite one out of the franchise, Mark. Did I mention that?
You did.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you two watched it, but I watched it on DVD because buying the DVD off eBay was cheaper than streaming it through Amazon services. And the billing on the DVD cover was Chucky, Tiffany, Jennifer Tilly, and Redman. And that's just so fucking cheeky. The fact that Jennifer Tilly actually is on there twice because, Tiffany. I just think it was so good. I feel like attention to detail like that is what Chucky franchise quite often does, and I'm all about it.
Yeah, but this film's quite meta anyway, isn't it?
It's meta before you've put the disc in the PlayStation. I mean, no one's got a DVD player anymore, right?
I've got a DVD recorder.
Mate, nice piece of kit.
I've never used it.
Oh.
I don't know where it came from.
Is it possessed by a demon?
Oh, I bet not be.
Mate, you wouldn't like that.
I don't know. I'd be in two minds, to be honest. Don't get me started on that. Don't get me started on that. You already did. No, don't get me started on that.
Okay, I won't get you started on your haunted flat that's definitely haunted. So, you've mentioned this already very briefly, Dev, that Universal refused this film in 1998 originally. And I quote from Wikipedia, they said it was too gay. And I think big love to Don Mancini for going, well, fuck you then. I want my film to be gay. And not releasing it with them. And it was eventually released by Focus Features, who released it through Rogue Pictures. But it took 6 years to get this to the screen because apparently it was too gay.
Yeah, that is such a choice quote. I mean, it definitely is a different picture than even Bride of Chucky. I don't know.
Yeah.
If I was at Universal, I don't know if I would have expected this script when I got it. And it does. A lot of the Child's Play films at this point do seem to have these massive gaps of like Don Mancini slowly trying to reinvent the wheel, and we had like a big gap of Child's Play 3 to Bride, and then this gap between Bride and Seed, and it wouldn't be until I think 2013 until Mancini would finally get Chucky back on the screen.
I mean, I think the lack of popularity and critical hammering that this film got probably didn't help with that.
Yeah, it is such a... And we'll get into the details, but Seed of Chucky is such a bizarre chapter for this franchise because, there's one thing about evolving the character, but like we said with Bride of Chucky introduces Tiffany, and that opens up so many possibilities for where the story can go. This is no wonder why he's writing a TV show now, because this film is brimming with different story ideas in different directions.
Yeah.
And it feels like an overwhelming chapter in a franchise. Like, where is the next one going to go?
You're not wrong. So, we start the film with CGI sperms, which isn't very subtle. And in my notes, I wrote, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, I wrote right off the bat, ... Christ.
I mean, I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, that's how babies are made.
That is how babies are made. You are right. And so immediately I wrote in my notes, how the fuck is this a 15? If we go through some of the stuff that you see in this film, it opens with sperms, and later on you see jizz, you see tits, you see doll tits, you see graphic deaths, you see it. How is this a 15? This absolutely should have been an 18. I think it's the most graphic of the lot of them.
It is so. I think it's the context though. It's just surreal. I mean, But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how I would react as a censor to this because, we see, like, as we keep saying, we see Chucky jack off, but we don't just see, like, his reactions. There is literally a close-up shot of him grabbing his dick.
Yeah, and there's a fucking turkey baster dripping with jizz.
Oh my
How
God.
the actual fuck is this a 15?
Well, I think if you make something cartoonish enough, then you will get away with it.
And it does feel like they got away with it. And I think you're right. The cartoonish nature and the absolute sea of gags kind of does deflect the fact that this is an incredibly graphic film.
Yeah, plus, like, then it is suitable for teenagers because it's educational.
Oh, yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. Like, I reckon that they were looking at this film, like the board of censors, and they were like, you know what, the kids need to see this. The kids need to see what the sperm of a killer doll looks like going into another killer doll's uterus. That's just the birds and the bees.
Maybe you're right. Maybe that's what they thought, Fletch.
I am Magic Mark.
Don't call me Magic fucking Mark. For fuck's sake. Sonna did that on the last episode as well. So, the made in Japan thing. The good guy doll was not made in fucking Japan. The factory was in fucking somewhere in America. That was the whole point of the first film. And Andy lived next to the damn factory in the second film. Chucky was not made in Japan. Fuck
He
that.
was made in America multiple times. In Child's Play 2 and 3.
Where has this made in Japan come from? Because it's wrong.
Who's to say, Mark, that over the years of being torn apart and put back together and over again, that Chucky might have at some point acquired a Japanese arm?
Oh my God, you know what? You're right, because in Bride of Chucky, when Tiffany reassembles Chucky, there is a moment where she pulls an arm out and she's like pulling bits off different dolls and stuff. So really, Chucky is like multi-ethnic now. Like, he has different lineages.
Holy shit.
There you go, he's part Japanese.
That actually makes fucking sense. Like, actually, that could be like, fuck. Okay, fine. I'll cancel my rant about made in Japan. You've made it make sense. For fuck's sake. So it starts with the doll's eye view. It kind of played with your expectations and saw that Glenn or Glenda was horrified. Then we see Glenn being used as a ventriloquist dummy, which, if you had a doll that talks, that's a really good idea.
At the International Ventriloquist Competition in Glastonbury.
I mean, yes.
You know the International Ventriloquist Competition that they have at Glastonbury?
The classic act of Sykes and Shitface.
Exactly. I remember every year as a child, we would all flock to Glastonbury for the International Ventriloquist Competition, where we'd all stand in awe at the ventriloquist acts. Why is it in Glastonbury?
I don't know. They don't really use the location of Glastonbury as a thing, other than it's in England.
Maybe it's in Glastonbury because the International Ventriloquist Competition is such a popular event that it has to be held in one of the most famous and hallowed grounds of live entertainment there is, which is Glastonbury.
Maybe. I don't have an answer. Is that actually an international ventriloquist? Right. Someone Google international ventriloquist.
Of course I Googled it, Mark. No, there bloody isn't an international ventriloquist competition in Glastonbury. It does not happen.
Are you a bit devoed?
Yeah, I am actually, because I did Google it and it's not there. They don't have it. There isn't, like, I just don't get it. Why isn't he just at a freak show? Why couldn't he just be at a freak show? Why does it have to be the International Ventriloquist Competition?
Because it's the same reason why Hannah Spirit from S Club 7 is in this movie. It's for some reason there's a bunch of fucking British people in this movie. It never alludes to any reason.
Because he's voiced by Pippin, isn't he?
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for you. But I tell you what, I want them to make Chucky Goes Psycho.
Okay.
Do you not think Chucky Goes Psycho as like an even more meta thing, like as like a DVD extra or something, would have been fucking ace?
That is such a weird movie because it reminds me of the Stab movies inside the Scream movies, except it doesn't seem to acknowledge that the other events spawned movies. They just skipped straight to Bride of Chucky with this.
Yeah. So this film is so meta. It's got a film within a film. It's got Hannah from S Club for no reason. It's got Jennifer Tilly playing Jennifer Tilly and Tiffany the doll, and Jennifer Tilly inside Tiffany the doll, and the doll. What the fuck? And I think there's a real kind of gentle poking fun at Jennifer Tilly and their own choice of casting her.
You say gentle. They call her fat multiple times in the film.
Okay, remove the gentle. She's basically not the star that they expected when they booked her to do Bride of Chucky, and she didn't become the star they expected.
Well, this is what I talked about, yeah, because we said that Bride of Chucky makes her out to be a huge star, and she was a rising star at the time. And this film, like, she really allowed them to make fun of the fact that she wasn't rising so much.
And it seems to me like Chucky killed all those kids, but also killed her career. Bow, 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 bow. I've been waiting to crack that gag. I'm sorry. I might put the sound effect in. I might not.
Do it.
But I think she's an incredibly good sport for allowing this. And also, to some extent, Redman, he absolutely looks like a massive bellend in this. And he's accepted that script. And, you know, both Jennifer Tilly and Redman are made to look like terrible, terrible human beings. And they seem okay with it.
Well, yeah, they're in on the joke, though, aren't they? I mean, what it is it's a satire of show business, isn't it? You know, it's a commentary on you know, directors. Like Redman plays a director who sleeps with his potential actresses, which is a really big thing, like a really big issue in that industry. So,
yep,
you know, and they're all aware of that, clearly, to the point that they're making films making jokes about it.
And this was way before Me Too as well. When you actually think about how controversial this has become subsequently, it was, again, like we've said about other elements of this film, it was way ahead of its time. And it was quite savage.
Yeah. That's the point, isn't it? I don't know. It, like the way it kind of treats celebrity is just really funny to me. It's just this kind of savage, this savage wasteland where everyone's just going for each other. Like, I think at one point they mentioned that Martha Stewart's getting executed.
I laughed so much at that line.
Like, yeah, and they kill Britney Spears as well. Like, it's just savagery.
They killed Britney Spears canonically in the Chuckyverse. Yes, I'm using the word Chuckyverse, don't care. Canonically in the Chuckyverse, Britney Spears is dead for a cheap gag. Oops, I did it again. Come on. They killed Britney. I'm not pleased that they killed Britney.
Is the so, like, seeing as Jennifer Tilly is like a real person who is in this film playing the person that she plays in the Child's Play films, does that mean like Brad Dourif is real in this?
I made that note. Who is voicing the fake Chucky? Because it sounds exactly like Brad Dourif.
Yeah, you know, so he must be like somewhere just minding his own business whilst this is all going on, right?
I think he probably decided not to sleep with the director, maybe. I don't know.
Also, so we're talking about the film, like, it's got Jason Fleming in it.
It does?
Yeah.
he's quite a well-respected actor as well. I mean, he did do Primeval, but we'll move over that. Maybe that's how S Club 7's Hannah got the job, because she was also in Primeval. There you go. Linking. Primeval was cack. The dinosaurs in that were fucking horrible. Like, terrible CGI dinosaurs.
Maybe that's what attracted them to this film. The not so timeless CGI.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, before we move on, if we're talking about actors and directors taking the piss out of themselves, you know Redman wasn't the first casting choice.
I know.
I didn't. Who was?
The role was originally written and rewritten for Redman. It was going to be Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
Fuck.
But apparently he didn't, for whatever reason, did not enjoy the idea, and it just turned it down.
Fascinating. I wonder whether that would have made any difference at all if Quentin Tarantino had played that role.
It seems like like John Waters being in it. It seems like such a bizarre and like gonzo, like self-referential role. I feel like he would have really enjoyed doing it. Like he would have put his all into it.
I wonder why he said no. And also, while we're still talking about this, I think it's probably because Redman is actually completely squeaky clean that he was confident enough to take this role.
It makes the character even more bizarre that he's not like playing a director. He is playing Redman, who is becoming a director. And his first movie is the Mother Mary.
And I think, I really hope that nothing Me Too style happened to Jennifer Tilly, because when you think about it, if she was actually playing this role and she had been in that situation, it would have probably been quite traumatic for her. In a way, when you think about it, both of the actors have been incredibly brave to do this, particularly when you consider how long ago this was.
It is an interesting point it was written at, because like Britney being in pop culture and stuff and killing her off, like, it's a very 2000s movie, and it isn't as straightforward as her just getting manipulated. She engages it. She starts it by hitting on Redman, and then they talk about that when she talks to her assistant Joan. Like, they talk about like whether or not she should be doing it.
Yeah.
So they don't just position her as a victim. They
No.
They do discuss and explore the myths and the truth behind people doing that.
Yeah, this film, I mean, I'm not sure it's done in a very sophisticated way, but some of the issues that it goes for are huge when you think about it.
That's what I mean about this movie being kind of a mess. I feel like there's a lot of great ideas being brought up, but like, I feel like it really should have just focused on one aspect. Instead, there's like 8 or 9 different subplots all happening at the same time, and they all have something to say.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I think the fact that they do just put this in there, and they do just talk about it when making a film about Hollywood, just shows how much it is just there. Like, it is just the background radiation of this industry.
Yeah, it's fucking grim, innit?
Yeah, it is.
Should we move on?
Yeah.
So, voodoo gets easier and easier.
Oh god, yeah, it really does.
The ritual in this was like seconds, like actual seconds. And I'm like, okay, fine. We don't need to know how the voodoo works. but it was, yeah, it got really easy.
Well, yeah, I mean, what's the point? Like, which film is this? We've had enough voodoo, Mark. Like, we just need to bang, let's get on with the story, dude.
Okay. One thing I did spot that I really liked was how it's really fun how much better at what they call Barbie mode Chucky is than Tiffany. Tiffany's quite shit at Barbie mode. And I loved that. Just the little touches, man.
Well, it's funny because arguably she's the more humanized of the two.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why.
And the tag team wire decapitation. Loved it.
Like you said before, there are some great This movie can be a bit meandering, but like when it gets to the horror, there are some really good kills in this.
And again, that decapitation, that's fucking crazy. I absolutely believe this film should have been an 18. And just that death. And then a little bit later on, we see Tiffany's tits. That fucking sound effect was everything.
Do you know, like, when we saw Tiffany's tits,
Yeah.
that is probably one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life.
It's the sound effect, man.
I can't, I think that might be, I don't know, it's just the funniest thing I've ever seen. And I love her. She's amazing. She just, like, I don't know, you can imagine it, can't you? Just like, here's some tits.
Oh, dear me. So, I'm going to go serious, right? So, not long after we see Tiff Tits, we do see Chucky and Tiffany strip a child and look at their genitals to determine gender. And I think that there's something really fucking graphic and grim about that really kind of, after all the fun we've had with lines like "it's a hobby, really," and decapitation deaths and Jennifer Tilly being Jennifer Tilly, to suddenly have something so grim, really fucking grim, like from out of nowhere, that felt like I'd been punched in the gut.
It was a really, as you say, graphic. It was so abrupt, and for me, it felt really abrupt. That whole subplot just dropping like that. Like, this is what I mean about it being a 2000s movie. Like, I'm very glad that a movie is addressing these topics and stuff, but it is very abrupt and on the nose how it goes about it sometimes.
I think what I'm going to do here is a friend of mine who I've worked with on podcast 616, Carpenter Lockwood, they identify as non-binary. And so I had a brief chat elsewhere a little bit earlier before we recorded this episode about the gender politics in Seed of Chucky. So I'm going to cut in here and insert the chat that I had with Carpenter. With me at this time is Carpenter Lockwood. Welcome to Chucky Vision, Carpenter.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So we wanted to get you on simply because 3 cis male voices wasn't as representative as we'd have liked. So you're kind of my non-binary podcasty friend. So hello, thank you for being that.
Hello, yeah, I really appreciate being asked on for that reason. It's really nice to know that you guys are aware that, even though, some of you guys are queer, that if you're cis, it's not like full LGBT representation. And I think some people aren't aware that just having a queer there doesn't mean you're speaking from everyone's experience.
No, there's obviously some kind of crossover, the empathy and understanding of being ostracized because of who and what you are and stuff like that. But it is different. It's like, if we're going to do the crude racism comparison, it's like comparing the experience of an Indian heritage person and a African heritage person in Britain. It's not the same, even though it could be considered similar,
Yeah, because that's shared sort of experience, and I guess rejection is what makes the LGBT community and what makes those immigrant communities and stuff. But obviously everyone is individual, and every background has its own community as well.
Exactly that. Before we do get into discussing the non-binary and trans representation on Seed of Chucky, had you watched any Chucky films at all before, or was Seed of Chucky your first encounter with the franchise?
Well, I wouldn't say it was my first encounter because I'm very aware of him. As a big horror fan, I was raised on horror. And the thing is, my favorite kind of horror is haunted dolls. but
Okay.
slasher is kind of one of my least favorite genres. So I've never engaged with Chucky or watched them before because even though he's a haunted doll, it is predominantly a slasher. So I don't actually enjoy that content very much.
Yeah, the voodoo in Chucky is notoriously wishy-washy, and it gets worse as it goes along. But it wasn't good to begin with.
Well, I read the plot to the first one, and then I watched Seed of Chucky last night, especially for you.
Well, thank you so much. And first question, I guess, is, was this what you were expecting?
I don't really know what I was expecting. I think it is essentially what I was expecting from sort of campy parody horror, what I could sort of knew of Chucky, and given the title, it is pretty much what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting so many like celebrity cameos. I don't know if that's a thing from the original ones, but like I had a lot of fun with that.
I'm glad you enjoyed it because I do feel like the gender politics and the coverage of non-binary and trans people is remarkably sensitively done, and I wanted to check that was right with you.
Relatively, I think. When did it come out?
It was 2004, and that was, again, so early that when you think about it in the context of when it was released, it was remarkable, really.
Well, I think relative to its time, it's pretty sensitively done. You know, like, I wouldn't exactly call it proper representation, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
But it doesn't use Glenn/Glenda's genderqueerness as the butt of the joke that it would have done in older movies or less sensitive movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like it's not particularly bad rep, but it is like in a parody horror written by a cis gay man. So, and voiced by I don't know if Billy Boyd is straight, but as far as I know, he's not genderqueer. Although, to be honest, listening to Billy Boyd's voice was kind of really sweet, because Pippin's my favourite character. And whenever he speaks kind of softly, you hear all the Scottish come out, which I found funny.
Yeah, but it was actually written in 1998 and refused by Universal for being, they called it, too gay. Which is fascinating that the term gay covers all LGBT stuff in 1998. So Don Mancini, who wrote this, had clearly wanted to tell this story and add this representation for quite a while and had to release it through a different studio. So how do you feel about it being written, well, relatively sensitively, but not by someone who is genderqueer?
You know, I think that when you have that platform where you can start to write these things, you know, when you have that power, that you should definitely use it to the benefit of people who don't have that platform. But it's like, it's got to be like a delicate balance of your vision and the actual experiences and sort of like writing of those people. So I can be on board with people writing about queer characters because the writing is their talent.
Yeah.
But they have to properly like engage with the community and get all that research for me to be like properly comfortable with it, if you know what I mean. You know, they've got to use their skill at writing as like a conduit for the real representation.
Yeah, and do you feel that was successful in this film, regardless of how batshit crazy it is elsewhere? Looking at the character of Glenn and Glenda, do you feel that was done here?
I think, for the most part, Glenn/Glenda is pretty good. They're pretty good, but they come from a very binary film.
Yeah.
Which is kind of part of the joke, that Tiffany and Chucky are kind of immediately sort of accepting of Glenn/Glenda not having identifiable parts. And then they, you know, eventually sort of come to terms with it's up to Glenn to decide what gender they are at any given time, if they have a gender. But particularly the ending and the names I don't know. I liked it, and it also didn't sit quite right.
Yeah, the ending was something I wanted to talk to you about. The idea that being non-binary could also be related to schizophrenia, I wasn't personally comfortable with. And it feels that by splitting the doll into two different bodies, one being Glenn and one being Glenda, that it's potentially more of a representation of someone with schizophrenia rather than someone who's non-binary. Is that me being simplistic, or was that fair? What were your thoughts?
That was sort of the impression I got. I sort of see, because I'm gender fluid and I do go by multiple names.
Okay.
And so I go by my first name, which is Poppy, and I also go by Carpenter, which is one of my middle names.
Okay.
And any and all nicknames. I adore nicknames. But those are my sort of two main names. And over the past year or so, I've started socially going by Carpenter, and I really enjoy it because it's a bit more ambiguous and masculine.
Yeah.
And so if I at any point, have decided that I feel more masculine that day, or I've dressed up more masculine, that sort of thing, I don't mind what people call me, and I don't mind what people's pronouns are, but I'm swinging more towards using Carpenter and he, him, and they, them than I am towards Poppy and she, her, which I guess is sort of my default as a assigned female at birth. And so I kind of like that Glenn has the two names, because I kind of love that when, obviously names are important to everyone, and particularly when it comes to queer folks trying to present their identity. Some trans people choose names with the same initial. Some people choose names that are kind of nicknames of their, or the opposite sex version of their original name, or their birth names, or their dead names. Some people choose entirely different names to their dead names because they don't want to think about that. Or they have, bad connections with that old name.
Yeah.
And then there's, some people who choose a more neutral name, or people who just kind of go by either, like me. And so I did quite like that Glenn and Glenda was a thing, but then it became Glenda was solely female and Glenn was solely male. Mm-hmm. And that's what kind of didn't sit with me, because I'm both Poppy and Carpenter, but Poppy isn't girl me and Carpenter isn't boy me, if you get what I mean.
Right.
I, as a whole, am gender fluid. And so it kind of just became a little... Well, I mean, that's the thing, is I kind of struggle on where to judge comedies, because they have to play up things for jokes. So it kind of became a bit campy when they turned into Glenda, because it was kind of like Glenda was only there when they were, killing people. And that was uncomfortable. Because it became, like you said, more of another personality type thing than just they go between the two gender markers, or between three gender markers.
Genuine question here, and I'm not trying to particularly play devil's advocate. Is it known whether or not non-binary folk are susceptible to schizophrenia?
I have no idea. I don't think so. I definitely...
So that's just been made up for the film, then?
Yeah, I feel like that, if... I don't know any research on that, but I imagine that would be more of a sort of a... maybe a harmful stereotype coming from most homosexual and non-cis identities being mental illness, as they were classed back in the 1800s.
Yeah, and I think research like that obviously has to be done very sensitively.
Yeah, because most, particularly in British history, most slurs and queer sort of research is based on the assumption that being queer is a mental illness.
Yeah.
The terms transsexual, autocorosexual come from the diagnosis of them as mental illnesses instead of as genuine identities. Whereas now more sort of accepting scientific research has proven more that, when trans people, their brains are more structured to the gender they identify as, fascinatingly.
Right, okay.
And stuff like that. And I haven't really looked into the science of being gender fluid or non-binary.
I'll be honest, I've not looked into the science of being gay. I don't know where it sits with me. Do I want to be proved that I am scientifically real?
Yeah.
It's so difficult to know where you want to sit on that. So yeah, I absolutely get that.
Yeah, I think like psychology and all that is, and like brain pathways is super interesting. Knowing that things like ADHD, depression, and all that, like things that I have, do actually physically change your brain is really comforting to me. It's not just in my
Right.
head. It is my head,
Right.
And so when it comes to being gender fluid and stuff, I don't think I really care if that's what my biology is supporting. It's just who I am at this point.
Yeah. So I guess to summarize from what you said, for late 90s, early thousands, it does seem like it was as good as it could possibly be. Would that be a fair assessment, a fair summary?
Relatively fair. I think, pretty fair. It was a good try and was probably as close as they were going to get on screen, I mean, technically, Chucky is queer media because it was written and created by a gay man.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't really call it, like queer representation. Like it's not intrinsically connected to queer history, not in the way that like Rocky Horror is,
Right. Right.
But I think for 2004 it was a pretty good shot, and the way they spoke about it was actually fairly decent for a misogynistic, over the top male character like Chucky, and this like twisted like lover turned mother character of Tiffany. I think they handled it relatively well, going off those characters and their reactions to Glenn/Glenda.
So the following films don't have Glenn or Glenda in at all. There are two more after Seed of Chucky, and it's pretty much confirmed that, at least for series 1, we're not going to see Glenn or Glenda in the first series of Chucky. Do you want to see more Glenn or Glenda?
I mean, they were quite sweet as a character, and I love Billy Boyd. I mean, having watched it, I was definitely correct in my assumption that I don't really like the Chucky films. They're not really for me. I'm all down for kind of B-movie and parody horror. I used to be fairly into like the Scary Movie series, but now I'm just like the movies that play up the grossness, I've just lost my ability to kind of put up with. I don't like gore. Love horror, don't love gore. So, if it's got more substance than that, then that's cool.
You might be surprised by the other films in the franchise. This is Chucky at its most batshit.
Okay.
Bride of Chucky kind of changed the almost classic slasher vibe of the first 3 to parody, and then the subsequent 2, which were straight to DVD, Curse and Cult of Chucky, are much more dark and modern and creepy. So this is an anomaly in the Chucky franchise, but I don't expect you to watch more Chucky. I've already put you through Seed. But Carpenter, thank you so much for joining me and giving me the perspective I feel like the episode needed. Is there any media that you would recommend to horror fans that does have modern, well-done, non-binary representation?
That's a good question. I haven't really spoken about American Horror Story with like my other friends who are trans and such, but I do like the trans woman in American Horror Story Hotel. She is beautiful and amazing. She's tall, bald woman who wears these like beautiful dresses, and she was I don't think she really embraced who she was until she was like stuck in the hotel as a receptionist. And I don't know if it's like great representation, great writing, but I always thought she was like beautiful and glamorous and relatively well handled. So I guess that one.
Brilliant. I mean, American Horror Story, I watched the first series and I just haven't got round to watching the rest, so maybe I'll nudge that up the priority list. Carpenter, it's been lovely. Thank you so much for joining us on Chucky Vision, particularly as it's your first Chucky film and it's Seed of fucking Chucky.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me. It means a lot that you want my gender fluid opinion on this. I had a good time despite it not being my thing. I did have a good time.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you. I just want to say thank you to Carpenter for that insight. We wanted to get non-binary representation on the podcast because, let's be honest, the three of us here are not non-binary. We are all cisgendered folk. So thank you again to Carpenter for that. Should we talk sulfuric acid death?
I mean, we need to discuss John Waters. I mean, if Tarantino wasn't willing, John Waters certainly was. And he is just a delight in this film. I mean, I've seen the film before, but when he cameos earlier on, and all the other paparazzi are talking about like the murder and stuff, and he's just asking, "How old are you, really, Jennifer?" And that could have just been his cameo, but no, he comes back as a character, and he has a death scene, and he actually, I don't know if you guys have seen it. There is a picture of him. He did an interview, and they took a picture of his like office and his house, and it's like, you know, one of those writer-director offices where it's like floor-to-ceiling books and references and pages and stuff. But like right in the middle, there's his desk. He's got his computer, and sitting on the desk is a Glen doll.
Shit.
This movie was a big deal to him.
Well, the role was written for him specifically, in the same way that the Tarantino role was written for Tarantino. Apparently, he likes Child's Play, which makes sense because, you know, as I said before, he's like the king of camp.
Yeah, and I think he has the most spectacular death of the entire film as well.
Well, you'd demand it, wouldn't you?
I mean, if I was John Waters, I'd demand lots of things.
Yeah, you'd be like, I want acid in my face.
I want to say he actually did say that. It's very much the same as, again, bringing up again, Jason X. There's a very weird cameo in that by David Cronenberg.
Yeah.
And Cronenberg was a fan of the Friday films, and he said he'd only do it if he got killed by Jason.
That's right. Yeah, he did.
Brilliant.
You got to shoot your shot.
You do.
And he filmed Chucky shooting his shot and seemed to really enjoy it.
How many times are we going to talk about Chucky having a wank?
It's a pivotal moment.
It clearly was for you two.
It's in the title. It's the seed.
Also, he wanks off to a copy of Fango.
He does.
That is such a... Oh, God. I mean, in any other film, that would be bizarre, but that seems like such a on-point character point for Chucky.
But, okay. So, I do feel like Chucky's taste in women has kind of progressed here. He was jealous of Andy and the teenage girl at one point. And obviously, Tiffany is... Well, when she was her human Jennifer Tilly kind of Tiffany, she is hot as hell. But he also now likes, like, doll tits. And he also likes the fucking goth chicks with face paint, apparently. Good for Chucky that he has a diverse taste in women.
He is an interesting character, because it's like in Child's Play 3, Chucky was fine with becoming a small black child. And now at the same time, he's like perfectly fine with becoming Red Man. I don't know what Charles Lee Ray as a human was like, but he seems so chill with the notion of like non-conformity, like these days.
I mean, he's not that progressive though, is he? Because he is thrown into the role of dad in this film, and he doesn't understand what his kid's going through, and that's kind of like one of his main points of the character, isn't it? Where he just doesn't get it. I mean, when they first in the scene that we were talking about earlier, they both just kind of project their own wants and what they want for their kid onto the child, and he's always wanting to go out for like boys' nights out and things like that. And it's a really sudden like complexity of the character that I wasn't really prepared for either. he starts feeling like inadequate as a parent.
I mean, I said before I'm not non-binary, but there was definitely an element of that for me when I came out to my parents. My dad said, "What did I do wrong?" "You didn't do anything wrong, Dad. I was always going to be like this." And I think it's incredibly well done. The kind of how they cover how damaging parents' opinions on who and what you are can be for you. And again, in the middle of this film where Chucky has a wank, what are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, write what you know. I mean, you've got to imagine that Don Mancini, as a gay man, has at some point had to stand in front of people all his life and come out to them, hasn't he? Surely.
Yeah, and I think the line that Glenn or Glenda says, "What about what I want?" Fuck, that smashed me. That I genuinely tore up over it, and it's really, really well done. I've felt that rage, not from being non-binary, but from being gay. I felt that rage, and then What Am I genuinely broke my heart. Absolutely broke my heart. I fuck in the middle of a fucking Chucky film. I wasn't ready.
Well, this is what I was saying at the beginning, that this film does have a value because,
Yeah.
representation matters, and to just be able to see something of yourself on the screen can just do a lot to help people understand that that they're okay, that who they are is okay. You know what I mean?
And I know there's been a lot of controversy about queer baiting over the last few years, where it's only ever implied that characters might be queer. Whereas the depiction of Glenda's PTSD is fucking real, man. It's absolutely heartbreaking that the parents' expectations have destroyed this child. It's actually really, really well done. And then in a film where Chucky's had a wank, did I cover that? It's all over the place, this film. I don't know what it wanted to be, but it didn't manage to be any of it.
I will say my biggest criticism of the movie is that there was an opportunity for some of these plot lines to perfectly coalesce at the end, because not to talk about the ending in detail, but we have that moment where Glenn or Glenda very explicitly says, like, sometimes I want to be a boy and sometimes I want to be a girl. Can I be both? And Tiffany is about to say, like, well, some people, are. And then, like, Chucky cuts her off. And so they start to broach that concept positively. And then later in that very same scene, Chucky has that has that epiphany where he's like, I don't want to be human anymore. I like who I am. I like the body I'm in. I'm Chucky the Killer Doll. And Tiffany reacts to that like, I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. When I feel like his and his child's perspective there are actually one and the same in terms of, like, it's about who you are as a person, not like what you are as a body.
Absolutely.
All of the characters do kind of struggle with this feeling of inadequacy. Like, you've got Jennifer Tilly, who feels like her star is falling in Hollywood, and like she's failing as an actress. You've got Tiffany, who feels like she has a problem that she needs to overcome, this addiction to murder, and also this inadequacy as a parent. Chucky clearly, up until the end, isn't sure what he wants to do and what he wants to be. And I think they all, to an extent, are dealing with living up to certain expectations outside of themselves.
Very true. And I think to have this theme of, I guess, imposter syndrome, again, in a horror film, that's fucking radical, man. That's pioneering shit. I'm not sure they did it well, but I'm really glad they did it.
It definitely has been an undercurrent in all of the films, because all the films from the very beginning have dealt with, like, possession and body swapping and stuff. So, like, I think we've mentioned it with some of the earlier sequels, that because of the tightness of the plot, it's always been Chucky wants to swap bodies with Andy. But we never really question what he's going to do at the end of that. Like, he's just going to be a 6-year-old boy at the end of it. And this is one of the first films of the series to really lean in on that feeling of, as you said, imposter syndrome. Both Chucky and Tiffany have felt trapped in their bodies, and one of the conflicts is them as characters. If they both get put into human bodies, they're still going to have the same arguments in different bodies. So I think that's what Chucky is, just slowly just learning to accept.
Yeah, and I think the fact that Chucky the Killer Doll is an advocate for I am what I am really tells you a lot about the writer more than the character.
Well, absolutely. I think you're 100% correct on that one. Also, it's horror. Horror is always going to be the place where you find where we talk about issues first, because horror is allowed to be about subjects that we don't normally talk about by its very nature. So in turn, it can sometimes be used as a tool to progress a narrative like this.
Yeah, I think you're right. They also burnt Hannah from S Club. I wasn't ready. Hannah from S Club got burnt. What?
Where's Hannah from S Club now?
Didn't S Club have a reunion or something?
Did they?
But aren't they S Club 3? Because only 3 of the original ones are still there.
Oh, that's sad. Why didn't they change the name to S Club anyway, didn't they? Because they didn't have 7 people. So why would they...
right.
Oh, S Club.
I'm sure you can see S Club at Butlins, mate. Should we have a holiday to Butlins and go and see S Club? Probably see Damage as well. Do you remember Damage?
We can find Hannah Spirit and ask her about what her experiences were on the set of Seed of Chucky.
I mean, I would love to interview Hannah Spirit. We should get her on this
more
podcast.
Questions about this movie than she does about the band.
Yeah,
True.
Ask her if she saw Chucky's dick.
I'm totally going to tweet Hannah Spirit. She won't reply, but I am actually going to do it. Why the fuck not? So the next note I made wasn't subtle. I put birth noises, ew.
Oh my god, yeah. What the hell was that?
Horrible is what it was.
The squelchy birth noises.
I mean, I've never been to a birth, and I have no intention of going to one. And I don't really feel like I have the right to an opinion on whether or not those noises were accurate, but I didn't like them.
Do you know, when I was watching this film last night, I was sat at my desk at work, and I was eating a particularly juicy orange. And, guys, I did not finish that orange.
Oh, dear me. That's got to have been deliberate that those noises were so mingy.
Well, I mean, it's a mingy film, isn't it, Mark?
True that. And it also manages to get in some cheeky parodies as well. The Here's Johnny thing and the Matrix parody made me laugh.
Oh, yeah, it does a Matrix parody.
Yeah, it does.
And The Shining, and it does Psycho at the beginning as well, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. But I do feel like this film, when you actually take a step back and look at what Chucky and Tiffany do in this film, I think that of everything they've done, this is where they've committed the most evil. Not only have they done murders and stolen people's bodies, but literally everything by the end of this film is horribly fucked up and twisted, and everybody, including themselves, is a fucking state.
Do you mean like in the hospital room at the end?
Just, yeah, at the end of this film, everything that Chucky and Tiffany have done has been absolutely abhorrent, even if it hasn't been deliberate.
The psychotic killer dolls, you mean?
Yes, but
they were a
just
pair
slushers.
of Romans, weren't they?
Oh, all right.
Also, I like how in that scene, Glenn or Glenda symbolically dismantles Chucky's misogyny by literally cutting him to pieces with an axe.
I enjoyed that too. I just My heart breaks for that kid, man. And it's a doll with spiky teeth.
Also, his name's Glenn and Glenda. Talk about reaching all the way back through time of through exploitation trash cinema. Like Glenn
Yeah.
or Glenda, like that's the Ed Wood film, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that film was clearly an inspiration for this.
It is such an interesting mirror because I feel like for anyone else making that, it would have just been, oh, here's me referencing a silly Ed Wood movie. But like that movie was kind of like inspired by Ed Wood's own life as like a crossdresser and his struggles with identity and stuff. And this is Don Mancini really putting himself on his own pages and stuff. So it's silly, but also strangely sincere at the same time.
I'd agree with that.
It's just the best Child's Play film.
It is the best Child's Play film. It also has Chucky having a wank.
Lest we forget.
Yeah. Also, you see Tiff's boobs.
You do? Just that sound effect, man. So we get 5 years later, and at this point, I have completely lost what fucking year we're in. So I think Child's Play was set in the year it was released, 1988, which means that Child's Play 2, I'm working this out as we go along, so you might have to help me. Child's Play 2 was set in 1990, which was 2 years later, both for the time of the film and how long it took them. Child's Play 3, that means that was set in 1998.
Yes.
And Bride of Chucky was set not long after that, was it? So Bride of Chucky was probably also set in 1998, wasn't it?
Yeah.
How long after Bride of Chucky was Seed of Chucky? Was it another 8 years?
I don't know if they say on screen. I want to say it's 2004-ish, because...
So how old is Glenn? Because obviously Glenn was born at the end of Bride of Chucky. Glenn's about 6 or 8, aren't they?
True, yeah. I never consider that, really, with Glenn as a character, because he seems almost older, doesn't he?
Let's assume that Glenn or Glenda is 8. So 1998 plus 8 is 2006. So this film is set in 2006. It was made in 2004. I'm going to suggest that this is actually made in 2004 and they've caught up. Let's say Glenn's 6. Okay. So the final scene is set in 5 years later, 2009. Okay, so I think we've got that right. So the final scene, 5 years later, is 2009. Are we in agreement? So have I done my maths right?
That sounds right, yeah.
Right. That was fucking hard, that, wasn't it?
Oh my god, you need to look at the Friday the 13th series, because almost every other film in that, from like the beginning, starts doing like 5 years later, 6 years later. So like, Jason Takes Manhattan was made in like 86 or something, but it's really set in like 2001. So it's so absurd.
Jason X doesn't seem like too much of a jump now, does it?
Well, that's the same thing. Yeah, the last one, Jason Goes to Hell, they had jumped so far ahead that was like... that was 1993, but they had jumped ahead so many times that was set in 2003, so Freddy vs. Jason happens literally months after that.
Oh my god.
Oh, wibbly, wobbly, timey, fucking wimey. That wasn't even a term when this film was released and they were doing it. See, ahead of its time, and Chucky has a wank.
Also, like I like this last scene in which the babysitter is complaining to Jennifer Tilly about Glenda and what a nightmare she is, and she lists off a bunch of stuff that she's done, like a bunch of naughty stuff that she's done, and my favourite thing amongst that list is she called the cat the C word.
I can't abide by that.
Who amongst us hasn't seen a particularly cunty cat and gone, "Oi, cat, you're a cunt, you are."
Me, I have not done that, and I am offended.
I call cats cunts all the time, Mark. I do it all the time.
Oh, no, you're done. Someone fucking close his mic off or something.
Do you think Don was trying to cast enough British people in this movie that he could get away with using the C word?
And I think if they had used the C word, that would have been what would have made it an 18. We've talked about how it fucking should be. If they'd said cunt, then it would have been an 18.
Where was the fuck?
Yeah, in the other films, there's a lot more fucks than I think we got in this film.
I think because like for it to be a 15, you're only allowed so many fucks, right?
Yeah.
I think Tiffany gets all the fucks in this film. I don't know. I might have to watch it back, but I think Tiffany is the fuck master of this film. The fuck meister, if you will.
Fuck's sake. I tell you what, we get another Tiffany montage like we did in the last film in Bride of Chucky. And, more Blondie, more death highlights. Love it.
That was a very fun credit sequence.
But I do feel like this was the first time I spotted a track in this film. Right at the end was the Blondie track, and I really liked it. I fucking love Blondie. But I do feel like it's a step down, a significant step down on the soundtrack compared to Bride of Chucky, which almost relied on how 90s metal its soundtrack was.
Yeah, this film, that's why another reason why this film feels odder, because it just seems to exist in its own time frame and world, doesn't it? Whereas Bride feels like a very end of 90s, early 2000s movie. This at times feels so 2000s, but other times not. It doesn't feel anything.
I think the soundtrack for Bride was clearly an investment. They would have spent a significant portion of their budget on that soundtrack, and they only had half the budget of Bride for Seed, so I suspect the soundtrack was what had to be sacrificed.
Is it not an original song by Redman in the credits?
Well, yeah, that probably came as a package deal.
I did find it odd the amount of stock music that everyone listens to. It was just really jarring whenever you see someone driving in a car just listening to stock lift music. Like, nobody does that.
No.
That's what I kept thinking whenever they showed Redman's Hummer. And they kept playing that music, and I was like, wow, this is really stock fake music. And then the credits start. That's the start of his actual song. That's a real song.
Oh no, Redman.
The cheap 2-for-1 deal. Book Redman as an actor, get a free song.
There you go. You wouldn't get that from Quentin Tarantino.
No, you wouldn't. He'd have probably insisted that he got the fuck as well.
Oh, he would have had the fuck and the feet, I'm guessing.
We would have had so much more doll feet in this movie.
Oh no, stop this.
He's just like, what about a scene where Tiffany is barefoot and she runs across my face? And Dom and That's too weird for Seed of Chucky.
And the final thing that absolutely popped me was on the credits where it had Jennifer Tilly played Jennifer Tilly, Jennifer Tilly played fucking Tiffany, and then Billy Boyd played Glenn and Billy Boyd played Glenda. I was like, you motherfuckers.
Love it.
So meta. This film is special to me, and I can't quite put my finger on why. It is so awesome, so clever, so interesting, so of its time, yet a bit cack.
It's just the best one. This is why I chose it, because it's just clearly the most superior Child's Play film, and possibly the most superior film.
Again, because I do feel this film has so much going for it and so much to explore. One is, I hope that if season 1 of Chucky does well enough, that Mancini has the confidence to bring back Glenn or Glenda.
I'd agree with that.
And really actually explore everything he started here. But then at the same time, they also reference here that Tiffany has, they reference her mother again, but they also reference her sister, and I want even more Jennifer Tilly in these sequels. I want the Naughty Professor 2, the clumps of the Chucky world. Like 5 Jennifer Tillys all on screen.
Oh my god, that'd be amazing.
I fear that they may be trying to make Chucky a little bit more straight, and I mean that quite deliberately as a pun. And I would like to see that too, but I don't know whether it'll fit the tone that the trailer has suggested for the Chucky series.
They definitely still tease stuff like that, because in both Curse and Cult of Chucky, whenever this is continued, we get Tiffany in the body of Jennifer Tilly, and I think in both films, characters are like, "Hey, don't you look just like that actress?" And she's like, "I get that all the time."
You can't put it back in the box. I mean, they had to put it back in the box. Like this film was so good, but it was so underappreciated that Chucky had to just go back into being, like, Child's Play had to go back into just being a horror franchise. It just had to go back to being straight horror. I think the subsequent films were like straight to video as well, or straight to DVD.
Yeah,
they were. Yeah,
like what a shame. criminally underappreciated.
I think you're right, but the reality is that underappreciated doesn't make money, and it was a flop.
but I feel like I don't know. It seems like he's working his way back up, because, as I say, those other movies are direct to DVD, but he had a better grasp on like plotting and making it more like a horror movie, but also slowly feeding back those weird ideas like Jennifer Tilly as Tiffany and stuff. He slipped them back in these more traditional horrors, and he handled the budget better. And now an actual TV network is giving him a chance to, like, how many episodes is it? Like 6, 8 episodes, like
10 episodes.
They're really giving him a chance to explore stuff. So I mean, maybe if the show does well, maybe like at the very least like a sci-fi original like movie or something. He's working his way back up again.
Yeah, I think now's the perfect time to just get weird and completely destroy that trust that they've placed in him to make straight horror films. And let's just get weird with it. Let's just get I think they should just reenact the plot of like Faster Pussycat or something, and just make it just weird. Every film should just be weird. I think all the best art is just frighteningly weird.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I disagree with that, actually. I don't think I do.
Well, there you go. There you go. I think I've made my point.
And just in case we forgot, Chucky has a wank.
And God, he has such a good time with it as well, though, doesn't he?
He's
just
loving it.
He's like, have you ever had a wank? And well, no, I mean, I know, like, we all, yeah, but like, have you ever just been like, just laughing? It's just the joy of it, the joy of it.
I thought that he was getting so carried away at the moment where he like lifts the cup up, and I'm like, calm down, mate, bring that back down. Don't forget what you're doing this for.
Maybe you had to have two.
So, Fletch, thank you so much for joining us and bringing your unique insights to Chucky Vision. Where and when and how can people find you on the internet?
So, what I'll be doing is I'll be preparing for our November show, which you will be commentating at, hopefully, unless you change your mind about that one, Mark. But
I mean, it is fucking death matches in Pop World. I am a little bit scared.
You're going to love it. Trust me. You're going to love it. But I am, of course, talking about Kumite Combat Wrestling. I am the booker man there, booking those matches. You can find us at Official Kumite on Twitter and on Instagram, where you can get all the info about any upcoming live shows, as well as where to buy tickets. There might be a new podcast on the way. We're thinking about it.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
And if people want to find Super Tat Film Club, where can they go for that? Well,
you can just Google it. I mean, Super Tat Film Club. We chose the name for a reason, Mark. You can just Google it, and there it is. It's on all of the podcast platforms, wherever you listen to your podcast. So if you want to listen to our older episodes, it's all there. We've got shows featuring myself, Malachi, who will be appearing on one of the episodes on this podcast, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, we've got him on for an episode. I can't remember it's Curse or Cult, but he's on one of them.
Right, and of course we've got yourself as well as one of the Tat Club members. We've also got some of the appearances from other podcasts, such as the Laser Graves podcast. We've even got an appearance from one of the wrestlers who is performing at our shows by the name of Danny Darko. All there talking about our favourite pieces of Tat cinema and our not so favourite ones. So it's all still there. I mean, check it out.
And Dev, where can people find you?
People can find me over on Twitter, Absolute Travesty. If they want to listen to my old podcast about Friday the 13th, they can look at Forever Friday on most podcast services. I'm looking at getting into Twitch again. I was on there a while back, but I want to get back onto Twitch with twitch.tv/ShootThatNebula, where I talk about dumb films and dumb sequel ideas, which is on brand for today, possibly. And that is about it, yeah.
And if you're looking for me, you can find me at MarkAdamsHC on Twitter and Instagram. I've got lots of podcasts on the We Made This Podcast network as well. You can also find me on Right in the Childhood, Life's Milestones, and Shipwrecked and Comatose at the moment. They're all... Have a look at the We Made This Podcast network's website. Just search for We Made This Podcast network on Google. That's what Google's for, isn't it? So thank you for joining us for this episode of Chucky Vision. We'll see you next week for Curse of Chucky. And until next time, Chucky has a wank.
Nice.
Chucky Vision is a podcast brought to you by the We Made This network. Follow us on Twitter at CHUCKYVISION. Follow the network on Twitter at WMT_network. Our website is WeMadeThisNetwork.com. The logo was designed by Dev and the theme tune composed by Dark Fantasy Studios. Wanna play?
Hello everyone, this is Tony, Network Chief of We Made This. As you know, our podcast network brings together a brilliant assortment of talent who talk about all kinds of pop culture content, such as the episode you just listened to. We're not going anywhere, but we'd love to keep the lights on for even longer if you're able to support our network on Patreon. For just £2 a month, you get your name in lights and the satisfaction of knowing you're helping us produce more great audio. And for £3 a month, you'll get your name in lights, but you'll also get access to an exclusive bi-monthly podcast from the We Made This talent pool on podcasting, pop culture, and, well, you tell us. We'll take your suggestions. For less than the price of a coffee per month, you can help keep We Made This going. Just head to patreon.com/We Made This. That's patreon.com/We Made This. And get the ball rolling.
Elsewhere on We Made This.
Free with this month's issue.
This is Fruit Tree and Red Flower Girl. This is a band that are so fucking difficult to Google because they've got such a generic name. I was trying to Google Fruit Tree metal band and ended up with a load of results for like little metal bands to attach fruit trees to stick out and grow.
Oh, right. Send me a link to those.
The name being so generic, as I was doing my research, Esme from Hide From Time podcast had put up a post on Twitter about she was trying to do research for her forthcoming episode that she was doing where there's a black metal band called Spiral Staircase. and she was trying to Google black metal spiral staircase and just getting black metal spiral staircases, which I thought was quite funny because it was exactly the same situation.
Well, I'm glad someone else suffered the same pain as you.
Yes, absolutely.
They were fantastically on Casket, which is the record label that offered my old band a deal as well, and we did not take it.
Right in the childhood.
But what I will say is, I did like watching Hannah Montana the first or second time. When we had to watch the same episodes over and over again, that was when young Fraser was not very happy about that. For some reason, I've grown out of that. I'll rewatch stuff over and over again. Like, I can't count how many times I've watched How I Met Your Mother. But a younger Fraser did.
I can count how many times I've watched How I Met Your Mother.
What?
Each episode one time, and do you know how many times I intend to watch each episode?
Just once.
One time.
Real talk. We made this movie show.
You know, with all the water around, you know, like we're in a noir. I want to see steaming streets. You know, have the streets with all this moisture. Have that evaporating during the day and in the intense heat, like, you know, represent some of the stuff a little bit more visually, because, you know, it felt like she went halfway or 3/4 of the way to a lot of this really cool stuff and didn't quite cross the finish line with some of it.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.